Hey, what's up, Saints and Patriots? Apostle Claver T, Kamau-Imani here, the Christian politician. And Pastor Keenan has asked me to get you prepared for tomorrow's election day, the constitutional amendments. Now, depending on where you live, you are also going to have potentially school board elections on the ballot as well. Well, I can't help you out with that. But the constitutional amendments, how it actually works, usually after a legislative session, an odd year like we have now, 2021, in November, that first Tuesday, we vote on constitutional amendments. So, first of all, here is my unsolicited mail-in ballot that I received in the mail. So if any of the leftist anti-Christians tell you that there's some sort of voter suppression going on by us liberty-driven conservatives, ultra-conservatives, Bible-clinging, Jesus-loving Christians, well, they're lying to you. Unsolicited mail-in ballots are still going on. Here's the proof right here. So this is an actual ballot. And of course, because I live over here on the west side of Houston, in the Spring Branch area, we do not have a school board election going on, so my ballot only has the constitutional amendments. And we, the capital C Church, and certainly Crosby Church, are intended to be a political force, and we should be. And we should be up to speed on what's on the ballot. It is our right as citizens of the United States and of Texas to do so. And remember, voting is an action. And so we can vote in the will of God, and we cannot vote in the will of God. Let's try our very best to vote in the way that we think would be pleasing to our Lord Jesus Christ, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Holy One of Israel, and in at least trying to advance the kingdom through our political action, we are privy to the grace of the Most High God if we get it wrong. So let's go through these, and let's see if I can give you some biblical reasons, that we as Christians, a biblical rationale of why I'm recommending that you vote on these, the way you vote on these 8 propositions on tomorrow, November the 2nd. Oh, and let me say this. If you can, if your schedule allows you to do so, it is most wise to try and vote on election day. Now, yes, we have early voting here in Texas, but what studies have shown is that there is less opportunity for a voter fraud to be committed if you vote on election day. So I try to vote on election day when I can. Also remember now in Harris County, brand new rules. You can pretty much vote anywhere. Okay, so even on election day, the old rules were you had to vote at your precinct polling location. Not anymore. You can vote at the polling place on election day, which is most convenient for you. Now, it causes some problems in tabulation, and quite frankly, I don't like that. But just to make it more convenient for you, and just so that you are fully informed, you can go to the Harris County, I think it's harrisvote.com, and you can find the polling place that is closest to you, most convenient to you, that you can vote on election day. So now, let's go through the 8 propositions, constitutional amendment propositions for the Texas State Constitution for tomorrow. There's going to be 8 of them. So the first one, proposition number 1, the constitutional amendment authorizing the professional sports team charitable foundations of organizations sanctioned by the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association or the Women's Professional Rodeo Association to conduct charitable raffles at rodeo venues. My recommendation on this one is no. Why? Look, as much as we love rodeo in the state of Texas, and folks, I love rodeo too. What we don't want is special privileges and carve-outs for anyone. One gets a privilege, all get a privilege. I think you guys can understand that. Salvation is available to all. Salvation is a privilege, and if you accept that privilege, now you get some special rights, like getting your prayers answered. But on this particular one, a few years ago, I think it was Jerry Jones, he wanted a special provision for Jerry's World to be able to hold raffles. This unfortunately is an attempt by a special interest to get a special carve-out, a special privilege. No, we don't want that. If it's a privilege for one, it's a privilege for all. So I'm going to recommend that you vote no on Proposition 1. Proposition 2, the constitutional amendment authorizing a county to finance the development or redevelopment of transportation or infrastructure in unproductive, underdeveloped, or blighted areas in the county. This recommendation from me will be a yes. Why? Because this is a proper role for government. This is really akin to what we see in the United States Constitution, the General Welfare Clause. Now, the leftists have used the word welfare to mean welfare, give outs. But welfare has the definition of welfare being changed. That's not what it was originally intended for when the Constitution was being drafted and ratified. General welfare meant something that everybody can use. Under the General Welfare Clause, it gave the federal government the right to build the railroads or to build the interstate highway system, something that all can use for leisure and commerce. So, giving a county the right to develop infrastructure is quite all right. Now, the issue becomes you have to watch how they're going to finance it. That's why you want to be an informed electorate. Be careful about the proliferation of these bond issues, especially when it comes to ISDs. In our state, we are now approaching, or perhaps have now exceeded, over $400 billion in local debt. That's ISDs, counties, municipalities, by their bond issuance, okay? So when these bond elections come up, you got to be careful. You got to understand what they're going to be using the money for. And in most instances, I would be recommending you voting no on that. This is how education spending has gotten so out of control and the debt has risen so dramatically and alarmingly over the last dozen years or so, about the last 20 years actually. So now, and the financing of them is really dangerous as well. We're going to get burnt. Our children and our children's children are going to get burnt by some of these bond issuances. But when it comes to development of infrastructure, what Proposition 2 is offering, yes, it is a proper role of government. So I'm going to recommend yes on Proposition 2. Let's go to Proposition 3. The constitutional amendment to prohibit this state or a political subdivision of this state from prohibiting or limiting religious services of religious organizations. I think everybody remembers that during the COVID panic, churches were shut down in this state. How dare they? So this is a role of government as well. An essential role of government is to protect us from government. Now, it speaks of the state or political subdivisions. So that means counties, municipalities, and townships, prohibiting them for having any say-so about us having church. What it doesn't deal with, now I'm going to say yes on this, and you can, it didn't take very much explanation of why, because of our religious freedoms guaranteed under the U.S. Constitution and the Texas Constitution and encouraged by the Most High God in His Word. But we have to be careful here, because what we need is the legislature to limit the power of the governor to do such things, closing down churches, when he or she declares a state of emergency. Those powers need to be severely curtailed, and that is the role for the legislature. It takes legislative action to do that, and they should. That's why we need a good, strong lieutenant governor to get it done, to stop these executive orders that curtailed our ability to worship and lift our hands and praise the Creator. So we do want to go yes on Proposition 3. Proposition 4, the constitutional amendment changing the eligibility requirements for a justice of the Supreme Court, a judge of the Court of Criminal Appeals, a justice of a Court of Appeals, and a district judge. Too vague. What are the eligibility requirement changes? We don't know. It's not spelled out in the language of the proposition. Too vague. And when something is too vague, the default vote is no. If it's not spelled out clearly to understand what powers are being given to the government, we vote no. So we don't know what changes to the eligibility when it comes to requirements for running for the judiciary. We don't know what those changes are. We don't know. So we vote no. Proposition 5 is very similar. The constitutional amendment providing additional powers to the state commission on judicial conduct with respect to candidates for judicial office. Too vague. What additional powers are you giving to a commission? A commission that is not elected, but is appointed. So because of the vagueness, I recommend that on Proposition 5, you vote no. All right, let's go to Proposition number 6. The constitutional amendment establishing a right for residents of certain facilities to designate an essential caregiver for in-person visitation. Now, when we see these certain facilities, we have to make the assumption that we're talking about adult care, adult living residencies. And what's being attempted here is individual liberty. That a facility cannot bar someone that you want to come and visit you to be able to come and visit you, that they have to have some type of license or certification. No, this is a liberty issue. Now, it opens up a can of worms, okay? Because, we're against the neo-morality movement, but someone, whether heterosexual or homosexual, can say, I want a certain person to come and visit me. It's okay. 2 Corinthians 3:17. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty or freedom, depending on which version of the Bible that you prefer to study. But what we want is we always want to come down on the side of liberty. So you want that right. If you find yourself in an adult care facility, you want that right to be able to say, this person, that person, this person, that person can come and visit me, whether they're next of kin or not, and that you can designate them as a essential caregiver. All right? So we want to go yes on Proposition 6 because it is a liberty amendment to our Constitution. Let's go to Proposition 7 and 8. They're going to be very similar. Number 7, the constitutional amendment to allow their surviving spouse of a person who is disabled to receive a limitation on the school district ad valorem taxes on the spouse's residence homestead if the spouse is 55 years of age or older at the time of the person's death. Whenever you see ad valorem tax, that's property tax. And we don't want property tax. We want property tax abolished in the state of Texas. Because until we abolish property tax, we don't have private property in Texas. So anything that gives the citizens the right to avoid property taxes, especially in what is a tragic situation like this, they've lost a loved one, and they can get exemptions for that, especially if they are disabled. Absolutely, we want to vote yes on that. And we want to push our legislators and members of the executive branch to do what the Texas GOP platform has called for time and time again for 20 years, the abolition of property tax, not so-called limitations on property tax or property tax relief. Has your property taxes gone down? No, it's gone up. And every session they say, oh, we have given the citizens property tax relief. Right, it's a gimmick. We want property taxes abolished. And we need a lieutenant governor to lead the way on that. Stop making promises about property tax relief. We want property taxes gone. We want to own our property. We want private property in the Lone Star State. And finally, Proposition 8, the constitutional amendment authorizing the legislature to provide for an exemption from ad valorem taxation, property taxes, of all or part of the market value of the resident's homestead of the surviving spouse of a member of the armed services of the United States who is killed or fatally injured in the line of duty. Killed or fatally injured, it's kind of redundant, right? So, if someone is a citizen of Texas and they're a member of the military, any branch, United States, that means National Guard as well, no property taxes, all right? Obviously, yes on that, okay? And I think a constitutional amendment has already been passed if they have been disabled as well. Now, I think it should go further. All fees, driver's license fees, car registration fees, fishing license fees, all that, they should be exempted from, in my opinion. But we'll take the incrementalization right now. We want to go yes on that, all right? So let's do our duty as United States and Texas citizens. Let's do our duties as followers of Christ. Let's exercise our right in this republic, exercise our franchise, exercise our right of self-determination. Let's get to the polls, Crosby Church. Let's get to the polls. And while I've got your attention, don't forget the Black Babies Matter campaign. Go to crosbycare.com. If you care about the black babies, you know that we have a sports marketing campaign partnering with Crosby Care to really tell the truth about the #1 killer of black lives in America, and that would be abortion. And we also want to tell the truth about the #2 killer of black lives in the United States and in Texas, and that would be black on black crime. You can make your tax deductible donation at crosbycare.com. Click on the donation button and label it Black Babies Matter. It has been an honor to be asked by Pastor Keenan to try and give you some direction on our election tomorrow, because these constitutional amendments can be so confusing. You don't have to take the recommendation. Exercise your liberty. If you disagree with me, go right ahead and vote how you are led to vote. Exercise your liberty. These are not dictates, only recommendations. But by all means, please, tomorrow, don't forget to vote. Vote at your convenience tomorrow, please. May the Lord Jesus bless you. I'll see you at worship service.